have the booklets. It's on page 8, Kapitel Tazayin, Michtam LeDavid.
Michtam LeDavid, Shomreini El Kichusisi Boch. Matalino, Yadino, Yutzu, Toivusi, Ba'alulechu. Ligdoishim asher b'u etzaimu, Adirei, Kochev Tzivom. Yirbiatzvo Yisomachem Uhui, Valasich Niskayim Midom, Uvalesu Shmo Yisom Al Sefusoi. Alinoi Minoschel Ki B'choisi, Atu Toimer Kuruli. Chavulim Noflili Banimim, Af Nachalos Shafuloi. Abur Salinoi Asher Yutzuni, Af Leilois Yisrini Chilioisoi. Shivisi Alinoi lenegdisumit, ki mimini ba'alemoit. Luchein sumach libi, vayugel kivoidi, abesu ish koin uvetach. Ki lo yisazoi nafshi l'shoi, lo yisiten chasit chuliois shuchas. Toidien yoy achaim, soy vasmuches esmunechu, nimois miminchu netzach.
Reb Nechemia Langer Marda Asra.
Manoyim Manadaber, an Aveda, Isha's Kena, Vishara, Tmima, was in this world for over 100 years. The loss to a family is indescribable. You can't put it into words. But the emes is, the loss is not just to the family, it's to this kehillah, that we had such a Isha Ksheira, Isha Hoylech B'Hoylechas B'Tmimas, for so long with us, for many years, Isha's Chaver, Menachem Yecheskel Ben Yitzchak, Zchayin Levracha. Now she herself, Hochel Menuchas, Toba Bas Mordechai Yitzchak, Leah Shalom. But in essence, the loss, not only for the Mishpacha and not only for this Kehillah, but to put into perspective, it's a loss for the Dor. We're holding on. We're holding on to the Ovar, to our Messiah, to keep us on the Derech HaYosher. And what keeps us is knowing we have such people amongst us that we can look. And by us in Besmerish, we'd hear about it. Where the children, the grandchildren, great-grandchildren would come and say, what's going on with the Baba? She's being mishtatif in a bar mitzvah. She's being careful with this. She has this shaila and that shaila. Just Chanukah. When Hetzi came to you at Shilas and Chanukah licht how to do it. We might see her and this and that. They pay the nekudas of Diktuk HaHalacha. This is not an Aveda just for us. And certainly for the Mishpacha, it's Aveda for the Dor. We don't have who to look back to realize what does a world of Yidden look like? What did Amal look like? What is it supposed to look like? They call these type of people Pashat Yidden, but they're far from Pashat. They're so not Pashat. They're Tmimis in Avodas Hashem, in Avos Hashem, in Diktuk HaMitzvahs. Their focus on what's important and keep it going. Toba Bas Mordechai Yitzchak saw many worlds b'Cherbonim then, and many worlds b'Binyonim. She obviously lived in pre-war Europe, a world It was a lichtige world, simple, difficult, but lichtig, where people live with their mishpachis, where Oved Hashem b'tmimis, established dairies, gave over to Messiah. And then came the war, destruction. We call it Holocaust today. Total destruction, lost her family. She's all alone, cousins left. Churban, and she goes to the Mekar, the Emek HaChurban. She's in Auschwitz. A young lady, a young girl in Auschwitz, sees people around the family, Nebuch, going the last moments, and she's still holding stark. She's not changing. She is who she is. Then comes the war is finally over. We're ready for Binyan again, a new world. Restarting, making a new world. And she's left behind in the communist part of Europe. She gets married. Started a mishpacha, b'choshech again. They're not letting you practice like a yid. There's no future. In that, the Mesiras Nefesh, the Dikta Mitzvahs, the Tefillah, the wanting, her children that she was zeichet to have, they should go al derech hayosher, they should remember our Messiah. Nothing will stand in the way of that, the focus. And then that world finally, that choshech came to an end. She came, restarted in America, sent her son to yeshiva, raised her daughter, was zeicha to see Deiris Yeshayim V'Rachim. She was zeicha to see a tremendous or that all of us are nehenna from, to establish a malchus, truly an empire, Yiddish empire. Stand alongside their husbands, Zechayin Livracha, Nemonim, Lashem L'Terosa, Yakidish Hashem, just to know about them, to see them, to watch them, to hear about them. Establish a family. And with Zoicha, Tarichas Yamim with Yisurim. Yisurim of the war, Yisurim of communism, Yisurim of losing her family, Yisurim of losing her own son, Tyreid, from the Amudim of the killer, losing him here in her lifetime. But the Gemara says in Brachis, Im Kibla Mascharim, people, yes, righteous people get Yisurim beyond us. Righteous people get Yisurim, Zok the Gemara, Im Kiblam, if they accept them. They accept them, Ba'ava, know that this is what the Eibishter wants of them. Mascharim. What's the schar that they receive in this world, let alone the next world? So the Gemara, Yira Zera Yarach Yomim. They're going to see their dairis. Yarach Yomim. Oy, did we see a kiyum of this bracha? Yira Zera. Look what we have here today. Those are here. Those were not able to come today. Yira Zera. Torah Dik Mishpacha, that lights up the world literally. Yarach Yom, she was Marich Yomim, over 100 years old. But not stum 100 years old. Soul Daita, her mind was clear. She knew exactly what she's doing. She still was with her family the whole time. Shtatev and Simchas. All the time surrounded by the family. Clear mind, over 100 years old. A bracha. Yira Zera Yarach Yomim. Last week's parsha, Yecheved gets remarried to Amram after the Gerushin, after Amram was Megarisher because of Xerah's power. He said, what do we need a family for? V'omad Kol Yisrael, everybody followed him. There's Chas v'Sholom, no Yiddishkeit again. No families, no Yiddish families. Then Amram, in the encouragement of his daughter Miriam, remarries Yecheved, and they have a Mordecai Chasanim. There's a Simcha, they're dancing. In state, the Gemara says, came out, they said on Yecheved at that moment, Eima bonim semecha. Eima bonim semecha. Why was Eima bonim semecha? After all, she already had Miriam and Aaron. It's true. She's going to, through this chasana, she would have Moshe Rabbeinu, who's going to light up the world with Matan Torah. But Eima bonim semecha. Perhaps the pshat is Yocheved lived in a world that was seemingly destroyed. Pari was geyser. There seemed to be no future for Yiddishkeit. People aren't getting married. It's the end. Amram divorced her. All the other families split. There's nothing left for Yiddishkeit. And from those dark moments, they somehow found strength to rebuild. And they said, no, we're going to rebuild. There's nothing going to stop us. And Yocheved remarries Amram. And there's going to come out, is going to come out, Dairis Yishon Verachim. Eim habonim semecha, when a lady comes and says, I'm going to rebuild, I'm going to have a family, it's going to be Neman L'Teirosai, I'm going to rebuild, I'm going to be the same person, I'm going to be at Tmimus, I'm going to live at Tmimus with Hashem, I'm going to be Mekadosh Shemaim in a very still, tzenua dika Eim habonim semecha. She left us crying, and the family bereft of their matriarch, of their leader. It's true, but she's Eima Bonim Samecha. Can one even imagine the Olam Haba, the Gan Eden, the Lichtige Gan Eden that this woman is going to have? Toba bas Martri Yitzchak Aleh Shalom, she'll join a tired husband and son in a Lichtige Gan Eden, in a place that's nobody will stop them from being the Hena Miziva Shchina. Nobody can stop them now. It's us, the family, and everybody else who admired her from afar, that we have a chiyuv to live up to this legacy, to go back to the basics, to mimus and avodas Hashem, not to forget to focus on what's truly important. Avoid the Torah, being a neman to Hashem, taking care of your mishpacha, having avos Hashem, avos HaTorah, avos of your mishpacha, to raise them in the correct way. To be thankful that you're alive and able to do things and have a right, and schus to do the right thing. That's the lesson she taught us. And she, Toba bas Martchi Yitzchak, is going to a wonderful place. It's for us to keep that legacy going. To be Zechreina should be L'Toif. We should be all Zeicha. This wonderful mishpacha left here a daughter, a pillar of our community. Her husband was ein gesund and stark. From her son, she had left over children, Einiklach, who themselves established families. There's Einiklach, Harzedis, and Babis. What a wonderful malucha. They should only know gute Sachen going forth. Keep her legacy going. We should be all zeicha together to Mach Hashem, Dimim al Kalponim, the Biyas Agayel, Amen.
Saba Brenner, son-in-law.
Toba wat Yitzchak en ab de Pessel. Yehi zichrecha baruch. It's an extremely bitter day. Indeed, a sad moment. Nevertheless, first and foremost, I would like to give Shavach for Hadaya to Misha Amar Ba'aya Oilam for the schus, for the privilege to be nourished by, to relish, to enjoy, to benefit from an individual of such magnitude, such personality. Over 100 years of love, passion, guidance, motivation, and inspiration. However, no matter how long a candle burns and gives light, When it shuts, it leaves us in total darkness. Mother, you have taught us to be thankful, to cherish and value those things we have, those things HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us, and not to shed tears over what was taken away from us. You have demonstrated, especially through those dark, bitter days in the history of our nation, that a person can be much more than a total sum of the trial and tribulation that one has to encounter in her life. You are a living proof that one doesn't have to wait till life is perfect for one to appreciate what she has and feel fortunate. Mother, you have taught us how to be a Yid. You have shown us how to raise our kids. And for that, we are grateful and indebted for you forever. On behalf of the family, I would like to express sincere gratitude and deep appreciation to the shlichim that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent to help us take care of you. Dr. Naim, who was with us till the last minute, Eva, Joanne, Luella, Sarah, Soledad, Anna, who practically became part of the family. On a personal note, Mother, I'd like to ask Mechile, I hope you find it in your huge, giant heart to forgive me if at any time I've mistreated you and showed some disrespect. Toba בת מרדכי איציק, תהיה נשמתך צרורה בצרור החיים. לכי בשלום. בי המלמדת מליצת יושר for כלל ישראל. You, more than anybody else, definitely earned the qualification to stand in front of Kisei HaKavod and demand, די לצרותינו, and especially תינוק בן חנה רבקה. בלע מאהבת לנצח, מחה עדינו אלוהים דמעה מעל כל פנים, וחרפת עמו יסיר מעל כל הארץ, כי עדינוי דיבר.
Bianchi Brenner Inikel.
Precious. I honestly never thought this day would come. Misa is inevitable, but so is Mashiach. And I had no doubt that, Bobby, after what you went through, you would be here until Mashiach comes. And that this day would never come. We lived with such an emunah pshuta, always saying, no matter what the situation is, Gott will geben, Gott will helfen, von Oivens will helfen. Those were always the first words that came out at every birthday, at every anniversary, at every simcha. It was always about the Rebbeinu Shloim. And as the years went on, and it was harder for you to see, you demanded a bigger and bigger siddur so that you could daven from the words inside with your limited eyesight, because you knew that was the connection that you had and that will keep us going. Last year's Sukkot, Bobby was already 100 years old. And I came home from shul the first day. Bobby was there for the Suda. And Bobby tells me, Yankee, bring me to the Lulav and Esrog. Sure, no problem. And I bring the Lulav and Esrog. Here, Bobby, macha brucha. Bring me a siddur. I said, Bobby, it's 2 bruchas, the Lulav and the Shachionu. 9, da was zogen die Yerutzen. At 100 years old, da was zogen die Yerutzen. No games, no monkey business. That's how she lived her life from day one. The Rav's words reminds me of the famous Rashi in Parshas Vayetze. Yitzias tzadik min hamokim oiser roisham bizman shetzadik ba'ir hu hoida hu ziva hu hadara. Bobby, you weren't just our praise and splendor and glory, but you were the communities and Am Yisrael as a whole. You had that special connection to pre-Churban Europe with that everlasting stamp on your arm that testified every day to your strength and fortitude. And that's what you carry with you to the Kisei HaKoved. But you didn't stop there. The Gemara in Brachas says that when Rabbi Akiva was being taken out to be killed on Kiddush Hashem, he was smiling, laughing, and his Talmidim asked him for an explanation. And he said that all my life, I was waiting to be Mekayim the Pasuk of B'chol Nafshecha, and now I could finally do so. Bobby, you did that many times over, whether it was in Auschwitz or the Death March. And if that wasn't enough, after you're finally zoicha to rebuild a family and have children and establish yourself in Slovakia, the communists came in and he said, B'chol nafshcha is not enough. Aber b'chol ma'idecha, I'm going to give away every penny that I have, the shirt on my back, so that we can escape and bring up a Yiddish mishpacha in a land that's accepting of us. And you bribed officials and you gave away everything so that your children could continue in your ways. And it's incumbent upon us, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, those that are here, those that are watching from afar, and Amirat Hashem, Vaiter Doiris, Aleinu Lahakim, it's upon us to continue with that Mesiras Nefesh in all aspects of our life. The Gemara in Nedarim says that if somebody has a good idea and he tells his friend, come, let's learn, let's start a new Seder, Olav Lahashkim, the person who suggested the idea has to be the leader and has to be the first one to show up for that new endeavor. Many, many years ago, Bobby had this idea with a few friends and started a Bikur Chaylim. The Bikur Chaylim that continues today as a Teres Avigail under the leadership of the young women in this community. But that's because Bobby knew that one doesn't live for herself. Life is only valued if you live for others. Others were always more important to Bobby, and it was done with dignity. It was done with sneas. Whether it was extending credit when Bobby and Zaidi had a grocery store, or whether it was inviting Nebuch, some quasi-homeless people that gathered in the shul, Zaidi would bring them home and Bobby would serve them a lavish breakfast. It was never about herself. It was never about what I need. It was always what I could do for Yenim. And most importantly, Bobby, we know that you lived for your family, for your children, your grandchildren and great-grandchildren. There wasn't a yontif that went by where we, growing up, that we didn't eat by Bobby and Zaidi. No matter how many people we were, Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuos, we were always on Las Palmas. And even as Bobby got older, obviously hosting wasn't an option, but Bobby made sure that the family was together, that we always were together, and that she was there with us. And it was this devotion to everybody else besides herself that I believe made her the oldest Shatchin in Klal Yisrael, making a shidduch at 100 years old. Why? Because she cared about Yenim. Because when she met Yenim, she asked, what can I do for you? And that devotion, no matter what the occasion was, whenever I would call or come visit, Bobby would always ask, "Nu, how are the kids in school? What's with the shidduchim? We have to work on this one, we have to work on that one. This one first, then that one." She held cup, she made sure, focus on what's important. I believe that übergegeben to the mishpacha allowed her to be zoicha The last words that she said Thursday was Mazel Tov, when she heard that Ushi had a baby. That's how she left the world. And she deserved that nachas, because that's how she lived. As Abba said, we have a lot of people to thank for being there all these years. People that have become part and parcel with our mishpacha, part and parcel of our family. Sarah and Solidat and Anna, Eva, Joanne, Luella, Dr. Naim. And I know I'm going to be in trouble for saying this, but Bobby would want me to say it. And she would say, "Thank you, Ima, for all the time and effort that you put yourself through 24/7, nonstop, to be there at Bobby's side at all times." And I know you're going to say, well, that's what a daughter does, but it's not true. Most daughters can't do that. Malcha Hashem dimam el koponim, show me your pursuers tovus.
Reb Daniel Weinstock, Anikel.
Toba, Bas Menachem, Bas Mordechai Yitzchak. As we used to say, Bobby, Big Bobby. It's hard to believe that you're no longer with us. It's hard to believe. You have been through so many of these situations where the doctors have said, forget about it, prepare for the worst. But somehow, b'siyata d'shmaya, you emerged. And deep down I thought that this time as well, somehow you would emerge. Because your life personified someone who was a fighter, someone who had reason to live, someone who had perspective, goals, and fought with everything she had to live, to battle. The truth is, if we go back to Europe in the Holocaust, when you came to Auschwitz and you were sorting through the clothing and you saw the clothing of your family, realizing that they were no longer among the living, you fought. You continued. You went through Auschwitz. You went through the death march. You survived the war. And after the war, you continued to fight. After having some financial success in a communist country, when you and Zaidi realized Mir wird nicht aufzeugen Goyim. You were financially set, well off and stable. And you decided that we're going to give it all away to bribe ourselves out of this communist country in order to start a new life in a country where you did not know the language, did not know the culture, and already of significant age. But I'm fighting, it's a battle. Yiddishkeit is everything to me. As Bobby used to say so often, the word Yiddish nachas is redundant because nachas, was is nicht Yiddish, is nicht kein nachas. And you continued, as you came to this country, to fight, to make parnasa, to send your children to the best meisters, to the yeshivas. You worked with Mesiras Nefesh in order to support your family. And then more recently, a little more than 15 years ago, when you had a stroke and life was no longer the same, you weren't able to have that vibrance of walking around and going and baking and cooking and doing for the mishpacha. How easy it would have been to just fold your arms and say, forget about it. I can't live the way I used to live. It's not worth it anymore. But you continued to fight, and you did the best that you can. You were pleasant, easy to deal with, and an illumination for the family till the last minute of your life. That's why it's hard to believe that you're not here. But you truly taught us what it meant to have values, what it meant to fight for those values, and how much inner strength HaKadosh Baruch Hu benches each and every one of us. And I just marvel at the amazing depth, the amazing neshama that you put into life as you fought through every single detail. There's another point that I think is so much appreciated, is the world that you brought for us. Bobby, you came from a world pre-war Europe. That was a world that was saturated with Yiddishkeit for centuries, hundreds of years of Messiah. America is a whole different world and a whole different country. America numbs the ruchnius, the spirituality. But you still took what you had from Europe, the emunah that was in your blood, the heimishkeit, the Yiddishkeit that you lived and breathed. And it was such a schus for us to see what a Yid from that world looked like. We feel so fortunate that our children were able to see what a Yid looked like. But in your innocence and beauty, you're like, this is Pashit. What are you so amazed by? But we had reason to be amazed. And we have such a deep appreciation for who you were and what you brought to us. Bobby, you were the matriarch of the family. But what's so incredible is that every word of yours, every one of your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, wanted to fulfill to the T. But not out of fear, because your personality and your character was so great. The dignity, the aristocracy that you personified with your life was something of such grandeur that everyone wanted to do as you wished, just because of who you were. It's amazing, the acceptance that you had for everyone. How every single one, your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, felt so close, felt they could confide with you, felt that no matter who they were, you're there not being judged, and they'll never be turned away from. And it's a loss that's very, very, very difficult for us. You were a guiding light. You had Seichel HaYashar, old wisdom, that we were able to draw from it, Baruch Hashem, all the way till the end. Your selflessness, Bobby, was unbelievable. You taught us how to be parents, what it means, parents living for children. It's really unparalleled, something that's so hard to fathom. So many people have an eye, and they do what they can to help their children. Bobby, your life was your children. That's what you thought about. That's how you lived. You were generous to others. As was pointed out, you started the Ladies' Bikur Chaylim together with others, which still continues in the family. Your sense and dedication to give is something that you taught us so beautifully. I hope that we can all think about the legacy that you left us with. The fighting and perseverance for goals. The Yiddishkeit from the Heim from Europe with the Warenkeit. And how you taught us how to live with dignity, greatness, giving, and aristocracy. I would just like to mention one more point, and that is, as Yankee mentioned, is my in-laws. Now, could be many of you know, but the kind of children that they were to Bobby was something that I marvel. My mother-in-law's life was her mother. There are many good children in the world who visit their mothers, who help when they can. But my mother-in-law, her life was her mother. When she made calculations, where am I going? When am I going? What's going to be with Bobby? To come every single night for hours to Fanem with Bobby. The doctor's appointments. Making sure the care is of the highest level. When we begin to think of it, the Kibbud of Aim is a throwback to some old time with unbelievable dedication. Bobby, we ask that you be a Melitza Yosher for the Mishpacha, for Gans Klal Yisrael. May we be Zeicha to meet again by Bias Mashiach Tzidkenu, Ubila HaMavas Lanetzach Hamacha Hashem Elokim Etem Me'al Kol Panim.
Reb Nossi Bitterman, Einikel.
Last night, the Mishpacha lost the Queen. Los Angeles lost the Queen, and all of Klal Yisrael who knew her lost the Queen. It's hard to encapsulate my grandmother's 101 years of living in 3-4 minutes, but I will try my best. Bobby was born in Hungary, and she was a survivor of the Holocaust. So we all know through the Gehenim that she went through. And Baruch Hashem, she met my grandfather, got married, had 2 beautiful children, my father and Aunt Leah. And they lived in a small town or shtetl called Spiska Podradye, which today is in Slovakia. And in the Bitterman family, this is the center of the world. You mentioned Spiska, my grandmother would light up, Leah would light up, my father especially would light up. But growing up in Spiska was not easy for Yiddishkeit. So my grandparents at a certain point decided that they had to move to America, and they ended up in LA. And my grandmother and grandparents, started the first kosher store in LA, grocery store. And from those two children, Baruch Hashem, she had 6 beautiful grandchildren, if I may say so myself. And from those 6 grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren. So there's a couple of things I just wanted to speak out. It was pointed out, some of it, but about Bobby. When my father got sick about 7 years ago, he was very adamant that we do not tell his mother, my grandmother, about this. And every night, my father would go to eat by his mother, and they would enjoy themselves, talk like mother-son relationship. When I was zeicha to come back, and I would go with my father to be with my grandmother, watching this relationship between a mother and a son at a ripe old age of 70 and 90 at the time was unbelievable. But as time went on, my father got worse and worse, and eventually Bobby found out that her son is very sick. And her first reaction was that she wants her son to move in to her house. Now, at the time, Bobby also needed care for herself, but it was more important for her that her son should get the care than herself. And that's really what my grandmother was like throughout our lives. It was never about herself. It was always about the kids, the grandkids, and so on. Bobby also always wanted to be involved in all the mitzvahs. For example, when it came to Lulav and Esrig, the minig in the Bitterman Brenner family was that Bobby Zaidi bought all the Lulav and Esrogim. That was how it always was. And as Yankee had said, whether it was Yankee, sometimes I did it, bring over the Lulav and Esrig, I want to shake, I want to see the siddur is too small, I need larger words. That's what she wanted to do. When it came to the matzahs, it was always making sure we all had the matzahs. But the truth is that Bobby really did do everything. When the families got together, the Bittermans and the Breaders, cooking for Shabbos, baking the cakes that everyone loved, she did it. But as she got older, she realized she didn't have kayach. So, she'd always tell me, when I would come and visit, I wish I can have you and your kids and your wife to come over, but echav nish kayach. That's what she always tell me. But the truth is that she didn't have kayach, but we learned from that what it means to get kayach. Seeing my grandmother survive the war, seeing my grandmother leave from Spiska to come, she was in her mid-40s, starting all over again and again, and she pushed and pushed and pushed, and that's who she was. And lastly, this everyone can attest to, that when it came to speaking to her about anything, she was always worried about her kids, grandkids, are they making parnasa? How are the kids doing in this schooling? I felt very close to my grandmother. I could talk to her about anything. And it was a special relationship. So Bobby, we love you very much. Thank you for everything that you did for me, my wife, and my kids, and all my family. Lastly, I want to say thank you to Aunt Leah and Uncle Tzvika. Not only were you there for my father at the time of need, and the way you treated your brother like no one would ever do, but the kibud aim you had for Bobby is truly, truly envious. And the lesson, for at least me, is that we live in 2025, how a person could show such love to a mother. And whether it was in Eretz Yisrael and you had to run back because Bobby wasn't feeling well, or whether it was by Chasna in New York, leaving early from there, you were there no matter what happened. And Bobby always used to say, my Aunt Leah used to be there every night at a certain time, and she used to say, don't leave me. And Leah used to say, I'll be back tomorrow, Mirz Hashem. But Bobby, now we're going to tell you that please don't leave us. You're next to the Kisei HaKavod. Daven for us, daven for the family, daven for everybody. Bila amovas lanetzach u'mocha Hashem Elokim duma me'al kol panim.
David Bitterman, Ari Nicole.
The Gemara tells us in Eruvin of New Testament Aleph that when they used to take someone out to get killed in the nations of the world, if someone deserved to get killed by the king, they used to seal his mouth because they were nervous that when they're going to dispose of him, he's going to go down cursing out the king and making a big disgrace of the king that's giving him this judgment. Says the Gemara, that's all in terms of the nations of the world. When it comes to the Yidden, Zok the Gemara, when a Yid encounters the din of Hashem, when a Yid encounters the judgment of Hashem, what does he say? The pasuk says, L'cha dumia tehila. A Yid is silent, dumia, and not only that, but tehila. He sings the praises of Hashem. When a Yid encounters the Eibishter in such a way, in such a close way, it brings L'cha dumia tehila. Not only does he accept it, dumia, but he begins to sing the praises of Hashem. Babi lived a life of L'cha dumia tehila. When she was a young girl, as everyone has heard by now, but just make a little calculation of her age at that time. She was a teenager, a young teenager when the war broke out. Unfortunately now, we're told and we know people that in the war and etc., people are suffering, people lose family members, Rahman al-Islam. Babi lost a mother, a father, a brother, sisters, a son. And nevertheless, she came out of the war, L'cha dumia tehila, with strength, with silence, and with praise. All of her refrains that she said about the Eibishter, about Amunah, etc., you have to imagine that this was her upbringing of those few years that she had before the war. Just a short span of time. And you can only imagine the illustrious home that she came from back. You can only imagine the lessons that she was giving over her entire life from her parents, who she always spoke about. Babi was our anchor. She was our anchor in Yiddishkeit because Hashem was her anchor in her life. She was all alone and she didn't budge. L'cha dumia tehila. She just kept on pushing weiter. We have in our life, especially myself, I could just say on a personal level, a person has different ups and downs. You get thrown this way, you get thrown that way, and you just take a look at Babi. She's going strong. She's doing the same old, nothing changing. Burich Hashem yom yom. Every time I would ask her, how are you doing, Babi? How's it going? Burich Hashem yom yom. Every day is a praise of Hashem. Like Rav Daniel mentioned before, this is a true kiyum of the Sefer. Sometimes a person could have questions in Amunah, in Ashkacha. We have terrorism, we have Kol Minei Tsaras. And all you got to do is just look at Babi. She didn't flinch, she didn't budge. The Eibishter has a plan, and we have to do what we have to do. The pasuk says in this week's parasha, Parashas Boy, there was a discussion between Paroi and Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu said that we need to go serve Hashem. B'nareinu v'zkeneinu nelech. With our young, with our old, we're all going to go serve Hashem. And Paroi was of the opinion, I don't think we pass like him, Paroi was of the opinion, L'chuna ha'gevarim v'ivdu es Hashem. What do you need b'nareinu v'zkeneinu? Take the gevarim, take the able-bodied men, take the people that are able to serve, that are able to serve Hashem, bring korbanos. But that's not the Yiddish approach. The Yiddish approach has been areinu v'zkeneinu. The young and the old, every single stage of a person's life, every single stage of a person's existence. The young, teenage, middle age, etc. Even to the old. 90, 91, 92, 97, 98, 100, 101. B'nareinu v'zkeneinu nelech. There's no greater expression of Ben Arenu Miskinenu Leilech than our Babi. From when she was young till the very last day, with a tkifus, with a strength of going after the Eibishter. And she had this tremendous midah. Not only did it manifest itself in her emunah, but also in going after her husband, and going after Zaidi, with an unbelievable, unyielding acceptance of his vision that he had. I was not present then, but I've been told that Zaidi pushed forward, and Babi came along, and she pushed as well, and they had to escape, and it wasn't simple. And we could just imagine this in today's times. Rahman al-San, we should never imagine such a crazy thing. But they had to run away, and they had to escape to a new world. And that was B'Nareinu Miskinenu Leilech, in every matziv, in every circumstance that she found herself. She saw the entire spectrum of anything that anyone could ever possibly imagine. And she was quite aware of the going-ons in the world. Another thing that Babi had, a Mardik Midah, was this refrain that she said, Baruch Hashem Yom Yom, to appreciate the goodness, the simplest things in the world, the simplest things in life. She has such a joy. She always used to say over, you know why I married Zaidi? Because after the war, he got me a pair of shoes and 2 dresses. Such a nice man. A very nice man. And she just didn't stop. She kept on saying that over and over. And it was such and I was always blown away, like, relax. I mean, it's nice, but she had such an appreciation. I mean, obviously it was after the Holocaust, but she had such an appreciation of the joys, the weather. To hear her talk about the beauty of the weather, the joy, such a warm weather. I went outside today, she was lichtig. And that's how a Yid could persevere. A Yid has to persevere by seeing the beauty and seeing the goodness that Hashem does have in the circumstances. I just want to end off that many times I've heard from Babi, whenever the topic came up, she would say, I remember when I was a little girl, we already said then, when kimt Mashiach, when kimt Anshoin, when kimt Mashiach, and we're still saying it. And it bothered her, it troubled her. Why do I have to wait this long? I heard this from her many times. I already was saying when I was young, when kimt Mashiach, and when kimt Aaron. We're waiting and we're waiting. Babi, we should be zeicha that your schusim should help out to bring us a kiyum of that want that you always expressed, and we should be zeicha to bila mabas netzach moshe mocha Hashem lekim dima kapon me'emra amen.
Yaakov Bitterman, Arinical.
Shosaf Mori. The thought I wanted to share. The Baruch Hashem, we look at Babi's family today, and we see Doris, as mentioned, of Erlich Yidin, or at least we're trying to be Erlich. Einiklach, or Einiklach, or Einiklach. And the thought that came to me that we know that according to the parashas of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and Chazal tell us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to give the Torah to Klal Yisrael, and Klal Yisrael had to go through the Korah Barzel. Klal Yisrael had to be refined. Klal Yisrael had to be cleaned out from any ra and anything that was inside of them, so that Klal Yisrael should be zeicha, Klal Yisrael should be befitting to be the nation, the Am HaNivcher, to be able to receive the Torah. And that was the Shibud in Mitzrayim, the backbreaking labor, all the hardships that we went through, was to be able to come to reach those madrigas. Thinking about Bobby, I honestly think that our schusim and our kiyum, the reason why we're able to learn Torah and the reason why we're able to live like Erlich Yidden freely without the nisyonis is because Bobby went through the Korah Balza for us. The nisyonis that Bobby went through are unimaginable. Going through the Holocaust and going through the Death March. I don't know all the details. I don't know if anybody really knows all the details. But the stories that we've heard, and then every stage in her life, the countless nisyonos that you had to make a decision and to constantly fight to be Erlich Yid and to be able to have a family, that was the Korah Barzel. That was the refining for us. The reason why we're able to be kaim today and be able to keep the Torah and to learn the Torah is something that I think is completely through her Mesiras Nefesh and her Korah Barzel, what she went through, which means that we're here in her schos. That's besides for, I constantly hear from my father that Bobby and Zaidi, they always wanted to pay for the mitzvahs. That was their nachas. They wanted to pay that we should be able to learn Torah, we should be able to go to yeshiva. They wanted to pay for our lulavim and asurgim, our matzahs, our tefillin. That was their nachas. That's what they wanted to take part in. That's what they wanted it to be. That should be her legacy. That should be her continuation. And to that we owe, I personally owe a tremendous hakaras hatov, and I truly believe that that's something that's why I'm zeicha to be here today as Erlich Yid. One more story that I feel like I grew up on. I heard this story countless times. I don't know if I'm saying over the details exactly, but when the family came to Auschwitz on the train, the understanding was that everybody tried to rush to get off the train. To get there first, maybe whoever gets in line first will have a chance to survive, to live. And there was an old lady on the train, I think someone from their town, and Bobby knew her, and Bobby decided that she's going to wait till the end. The lady couldn't get off the train by herself, and she waited. She was the last one to be able to help her off the train, even though everybody went ahead. And Bobby waited to help her to get off the train. As we know, Bobby was the only one who survived from her family. That was Bobby's life. What could I do for somebody else? Her complete selflessness for others, for her family, as everybody here knows, that's something that we truly were zeicha to, in the very first-hand level of benefiting from her kindness and her selflessness that gave over to us. Should only be zeich to continue in Bobby's ways. We should be zeich to the Bias Goyal Tzedek Kamocha Hashem Lekim Dimu Mehel Kabam B'nai Amen.
Hatzi Blonda Oriental.
Bobby, Big Bobby, as us great-grandchildren know her, went yesterday to the Yeshiva Shamayla. Here she was known as Bobby, Big Bobby, Toba. Over there she came up and she showed her arm and she read A for Auschwitz, 5861. What does this mean? This is a stamp on her, saying, I went through everything. I did Mesiras Nefesh. She lost everyone, father, mother, brothers, sisters. Everyone was killed. And she gave it all up. She came back and she said, we're sticking with Yiddishkeit. A lot of people left, but she said, no, we're staying here. Then comes communism, and again, she once told me, I saw the yeshiva wasn't good for my son, Tommy. Again, we left everything behind. We took, I think, 2 backpacks. We split up, and we met up. And that's how they're going to stay from. Anything to stay from. They came to LA. There wasn't much here, and she decided there needs to be a bigger chaylim. And she worked hard. Starting something off is never easy, but she did it. And she made it into the thriving organization it is today. Last year, I told Big Bobby that for Purim, we raised $50,000. The Simchas Chaim on her face, that 50,000, the words were, look how many people that's going to help. Because that's what mattered to her, that everyone else had what they needed. Whenever I called her on a Friday, even just last week, she wasn't feeling great a few weeks. It was just, I would talk to her, say good Shabbos, and she wouldn't even answer back. Maybe a good. And yes, last week she asked me, how are you? How's yeshiva? How's your chavrusas? That's what mattered to her. She cared that everyone, every grandchild, every great-grandchild, every great-great-grandchild, everyone needed to have what they needed. One story that says it all, last year, the day after Yom Kippur, I walked into Big Bobby's house, right in the morning, and she was sitting at the table, she couldn't move. She was sitting there with her hands out. What happened? That she didn't want to eat on Yom Kippur. At 100 years old, she wouldn't eat on Yom Kippur. She had a little bit of orange juice just to take her insulin, and then for the rest of the day, she wouldn't eat. My grandmother wasn't feeling well, so she couldn't come there to force down the food. And Big Bobby said, Bobby asked Big Bobby, why don't you have it? She said, it's Doch Yom Kippur. And Bobby said, the doctor said you have to eat. The Rav said you have to eat. She said, oh, but it's Doch Yom Kippur. That's what it was to her. She wasn't complaining that she had to fast. She was 100 years old. She could have easily said, I don't have to fast. I'm an Einus. She said, no, it's Doch Yom Kippur. Another Maisa that stands out, the Mesiras Nefesh, is that on Shabbos, she would wake up, and if she needed to get out of bed, she would have to ring the bell so someone could come in and help her. But she wouldn't ring the bell on Shabbos. Shabbos is not a time when you just ring a bell. She would try to get out of bed, and sometimes she got to where she needed to get to, sometimes she didn't, but she wouldn't ring the bell on Shabbos. Big Bobby, I want to ask Mechila for anything that I did to you. From the smallest things, you should be a Meilat Yosher, for the ganze Mishpacha, Bila Amavis, Lanatzach, Umacha Hashem Tima, Me'alko Panim B'nai Amen.
Reverend Bitterman, Anikel.
I think the last speaker. Rishos, all the Rabbanim, I'm a Malamakim, to speak here, in place of my father, mother, Alea Marshalom, Rishos, Rabbi Heinig, Rabbi Bess, Rabbi Langer, Rabbi Rubin, all the Rabbanim, Rishos, my aunt and uncle, Tzvika, Malaya, B'maharachta yamim. B'maharachta yamim. We're sitting here today, Baruch Hashem. As of last week, Bobby was having a regular life. At 101 and a half years old, she was davening and enjoying life and eating and thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu like we heard all the beautiful stories. But Maharachta Yama, why? What was the schus? I don't know who am I to say. I want to take one point, one inyan that will be Mirz Hashem, say Kelmole. I want to say over a story. I read this. I think it depicts what Bobby was, especially with the crowd will be here a little bit elderly, including myself. From Rabbi Eisman, Baruch and Miriam looked at each other, shocked and surprised. The Levaya had concluded, and all they remained was the Kelmole. Before the Kelmole, Mr. Yosef Greenberg got up from his wheelchair. Baruch and Miriam, their children, rushed to their elderly father's side. I too, this rabbi says, I approached the frail Mr. Greenberg, glancing at his children. Our father wants to speak, said Baruch. He wants to say a hesped over our mother. Rabbi, please help us. He's in no condition to speak. Yosef Greenberg looked at me and I saw the tracks of wrinkles that lined his face. It wasn't supposed to be this way, said Mr. Greenberg. She was only 79 and I'm 10 years older. However, Hashem is the ultimate judge. As Mr. Greenberg struggled to lift himself, I asked, perhaps this will be too much for you. No, he insisted, I must say goodbye to my wife. His children plead with me that their father was in no condition, either physically or cognitively, to say a hesped. However, Yosef Greenberg, who overheard the entire discussion, brushed them aside and his concerns. I must give cover to my wife. I helped Yosef steer his walker towards the microphone, and he takes up some papers out of his jacket pocket. I know all of you, especially my family, are surprised by my speaking, he began. And I know I forget more than I remember. However, I must mention one midah of my wife. Yosef glanced at the folded pages in his hands. Dramatically, he allowed them to fall from his hand. When I went to pick them up, he said, leave them. I want to speak from my heart. When I was 9 years old, my grandfather passed away. I remember the rabbi saying we must learn a lesson from the nifter to better our lives. I know I have become forgetful, and I may even forget today's date. However, I remember the rabbi's words from 80 years ago. We can all learn an important lesson, he says, from my wife. He turned to his children and grandchildren. Your mother and grandmother, she excelled in the midah of listening. Yosef's family looked puzzled. I know I repeat things many times over and over. I can tell you the same story in the evening that I already told you in the morning. And I notice how impatient you get when that happens. You always tell me, Dad, Tati, Zaidi, you told us this story 100 times already. I know I have. Your mother's greatness was it never mattered to her. If I told her the same story repeatedly, she listened to me with rapt attention every time I told it, as if it was the first time she heard it. Her face retained the same excited glow. It made no difference to her how many times she heard my Maisalach. It made me feel special, especially as I aged. Her sincere enjoyment in listening to me was the highlight of my day. I ask that all of you, when you hear someone like me tell you a story you've heard already, don't roll your eyes in exasperation. Take a lesson from your mother. I once even asked her, how do you listen to my stories over and over and over again and keep smiling? You know them by heart already. Yosef, she answered, each story I am privileged to hear from you is a gift from Hashem. It allows me to spend more time with you. How could I not smile? I want to tell you, the love that my grandparents had for each other, the love, my Zaidi, to be able to be there together with Bobby, Allah Shalom. It's hard to say Allah Shalom, actually. The two of them to build a home full of love, full of admiration. Her admiration for her husband, her admiration and love was unbelievable. You can sing the Zaidi song to last week. And their love, Zaidi.
and the Abba that they built together, and the determination to go where she didn't want to go. She didn't want to leave Spiska Podra. I asked her so many times. Zaidi felt this is the way. But the guy Kenisht Ovtzian Goyim. We have to leave the village. We have to go away. And he wanted so much that to send away my father away to yeshiva. Told me one of the hardest things in life. Send him away to Tarvadas. Just left the village. And to be able to start life again. The dedication and loyalty for each other. And the love that they had for each other for over 60 years. That we had their anniversary. How many years she took care for my grandfather. Every detail, every glass of water, something unbelievable. And that she did it with love. And that she gave over, as we heard before, to my father. My father moved in. She was over 95 years old. She wasn't a spring chicken, even though she thought she was. To take care of her son, as many of us went in and saw and were there. You know, the minig is to ask mechila. The minig, when a person's nifta, you ask mechila. You ask, we heard before. I want to tell everybody over here, I believe there's nothing to ask mechila for. You can't imagine the dedication of my dear Aunt Leah and Tzvika, my dear cousin Duvi Einat. Duvi, she used to call him the golden Duvi, Tali, and Daniel, how many times they came over with my siblings, all the great-grandchildren. I counted how many times Leah took my father, my grandfather, my mother, and my grandmother to the hospital. Cedar Sinai, I'm choshesh, maybe she was in every room in that hospital over the years, taking care in and out, and in and out, and in and out. Unfortunately, one time it didn't go out, just in. Unbelievable dedication, unbelievable dedicated love. To ask mechila from a family, Bobby, how many times you were never alone? Shabbos, Yom Tiv, every day. We used to talk every day. The unbelievable mishpacha, the unbelievable friends that you saw and throughout, and the friends that flew out, and the friends and the people that took care, that admired you. Bobby, you know, I know you would want to see, maybe you do see who's here. The ladies they're full. It's a full crowd of ladies because they appreciate what you represented. They appreciated who you were. They appreciated the love that you had for everybody around. They appreciated the godless of what it is from 101 years ago to talk about your Zaidi, to talk about B'ma'arach Yamim, the Kibbur Av, that you weren't allowed to have because your parents were taken away. But the honor that you had together with Zaidi and to build a mishpacha with Ava. And that's how you have good children. When you have good shalom bayis, and when everybody, the parents get along, and the husband and wife admire each other, and they look at each other with Ava and dedication, and you build together a Yiddish family full of nachas and simchas and gesund. And that, Bobby, we wish you a schus. I know you kept on saying, Bobby said many times, I'm not ready to die yet. I know I'm 101, there's more to live. We have shidduchim to make, there's things to do, there's no end. There's no end. Even last week we were discussing. Kadosh Baruch Hu decided, Erev Rosh Chodesh, we know Zaidi died Erev Rosh Chodesh. Sivan, today is Erev Rosh Chodesh. Shvat, we should be Zoicha, that all of us together, I know we're going to say, and davening Ivdos Hashem B'Simcha, and I'll end with this. It always bothered me. I remember my mother was Nifta, Ivdos Hashem. You look in the siddur, it says, Ivdos Hashem B'Simcha. Middle of Shiva. Ivdos Hashem b'simcha, it's the wrong words. I looked around, I looked at the art scroll. No, it says Ivdos Hashem b'simcha. Ivdos Hashem b'simcha. Ivdos Hashem b'simcha. You have to honor Hashem, work, serve Hashem with happiness during Shiva. It's wrong. I looked at every sinner, didn't take it out. What's pshat? I don't have a good answer. I don't have a good answer. But I was thinking, Bobby, we say every day in the Shmoneh Esrei, Baruch Atah Hashem, Mechayim Meisim. Baruch Atah Mechayim Meisim. And it used to be, it didn't mean much to me. Mechayim Meisim, I'm alive, so Hashem's going to send back my great-great-great-great-grandparents. They don't know me, I don't know them. It'd be very nice. I don't know, hello, was ist dein Nomen? Ich habe gelebt 200 Jahre zurück. I lived 200 years ago. 200, very nice. I'm your alte Seite. But when my mother and father were nifter, it all meant something. Can I see them again? Machayim Meisim. They're coming back. Baruch Atah Hashem, Machayim Meisim. Baruch Atah Hashem. Ivdos Hashem b'simcha. Bobby's going on a small vacation right now. And the vacation is something that we're going to see her very soon. Baruch Atah Hashem, Machayim Meisim. And that, which we zoicha, I cannot thank enough everybody here, especially all the caretakers that we heard from Yankee and Tzvika. They were my phone call every night, Eva and Soledad, and how many times, how many hundreds, maybe thousands of times that we've talked. And Leah, Hashem should give you the schus to be Malamakam Babi. We know every moment of your life, night and day, for many, many years, middle of the night, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, was how's Bobby, and what's she doing? Hashem should give you the strength to be Mamalamakam, which should be Zoichet Mashiach Tzidkenu, which should be Zoichet to the ultimate redemption, Mashiach Tzidkenu, with the Binyan Beis HaMikdash. V'her v'men amen. Bobby, Bila Moos L'Netzach, Moch Hashem Akim Dima Me'al Koponim. And I hope that we live up to your legacy. I hope that we'll be Zoicha very soon once again, that we'll together dance the ultimate redemption. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us the schus, Arichas Yom B'Shanim, everybody here should be Zoicha, that we should be over here, everybody should have their 100th birthday party, Meretz Hashem, in the Beis HaMikdash, Meher V'Min Amen.
El molei rachamim shoichev ve'bein ba'meroimim hamitzei menuchon echoyeno al kanefei ashichino b'ma'alois kidoshim utehoirim Kizoyaroro kiyamazirim Ese nishimas Toba basamot chiyitzchok Sheolechol yoyelo amo Bavur shayonu misipalilim v'noidevim itzidoko Biad hazikoras niyishimoso Bigane yiden etiyei menuchoso Locheine balorachamim Yasitireho b'seisa kinofo v'lioilomim V'yitzeroi b'tzroi rachayim es nishemoso Adonai hu nachaloso V'tonuach b'sholom al mishikovo b'sholom V'novo v'imare omen
Kfura will be at Mount Carmel Cemetery, 6501 East Gage. Shiva will be at 414 North Las Palmas, Mincha during the week at 5 p.m., Shachris 7:30. Those of you that help with the arm, please come forward again. We're going to be Malava on Oakwood towards Sycamore.